Homeward bound eventually, the news that we were all waiting for came through. In a day or so, we would be sailing to Ascension Island and then making the last stage of the journey home courtesy of the RAF. Eagerly, we cleaned all of the batteries, equipment, and vehicles and then loaded it aboard the Norland as the ship set sail. There weren't too many of us standing on deck wistfully watching the Falkland Islands shrink away into the distance. The general feeling was, thank God we're out of here and on the way back to civilization. Now let's get to the bar and get shit-faced. There was some serious boozing done on the journey, and I was drunk from the moment I went on board. Alcohol is a depressant, they say, and after drinking vast quantities of the stuff, I certainly did become depressed. I remember sitting at a table, surrounded by empty beer cans, ranting and raving like a gibbering idiot. Everyone else was in their own drunken world. I started crying, bawling like a baby, and nobody noticed. Through the tears streaming down my face, I could see the BSM and some NCOs staggering around like out-of-control dodgems. I felt like throwing up, so I went up on deck. It was late at night, and I leaned over the rail looking into the icy depths. I was overcome by this huge urge to jump into the sea and escape from this ship full of madmen. Would I have jumped? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. Scouse had followed me on deck. He came up and leaned on the rail next to me and asked if I was alright. I told him that I wanted to jump. He laughed and said something like, "Don't be a soft bastard," I grinned. The moment passed and we both staggered back to the bar for more beer until unconsciousness overcame us. I really think I would have jumped if he hadn't shown up, and I don't think I ever thanked Scouse for that. Thanks, mate. When me and Scouse weren't pissed, we used to Rex for goodies. One mission on the car deck brought us to a wooden crate hidden under some nets. We prized the lid off to find it stuffed full of Yorkie bars and Arctic ration packs. After about 3 or 4 trips, we had removed a goodly portion of the swag to our cabin, where we stuffed our faces in secret over several days, enjoying the extra rations all the more because they were stolen. But 20 Yorkie bars a day takes its toll on you. I've not eaten one since the Falklands. I can't even look at one without thinking of that journey, and I would have to be close to starving to do so. I'd had a similar experience as a 14-year-old Army cadet. I was at a gala in the Lake District. Once we'd finished our demonstration of fieldcraft and weapon drills to the public, we went for a look around. It was pretty obvious where the drinks tent was, but we were too young to be served. We were sat on the grass wishing we were 18 when one of our mates signaled us to follow him. We leopard crawled to the back of the beer tent and pulled up a flap. We each stuck our head inside to see what was there. Right in front of us were some crates of beer and some spirits. We decided to pinch a huge bottle of whiskey, and between the 4 of us, we drank it all that night. I was sick as a dog, head stuck in the toilet, shouting for my ma'am, Dad saying, "Leave him alone, that'll teach him to drink." I promised I'd never drink again, and while I broke that one, I've never been a big one for scotch ever since. There were ructions on the journey home, more than there'd been on the way out, probably, with everyone letting their hair down and drinking far more. We shared the ship with 4th Field RA and the Scots Guards. The latter were totally nuts, running up and down the ship's corridors all night, pissed out of their skulls, playing the bagpipes and fighting usually with each other. Thank God there had been the odd scrap between us. But the best ruck I witnessed was when one of their majors removed the crowns from his lapels and laid out a rather inebriated jock guard to the whooping delight of everybody, including the lads' mates. That's something you don't see every day. There was obviously a bit of tension between the Scots and the English, and, by and large, we stayed out of their way. There were 2 reasons for this. Firstly, we were heavily outnumbered. Secondly, they were psychopaths. This did present me with a great piss-taking opportunity, though. Walking along a corridor one morning, I noticed a group of Scots Guards coming towards us. In one of life's odd coincidences, one of them was a mate of mine from Dalton and Ness. As I walked past, I casually said, "All right, Wilbur." He looked around, saw me, and couldn't believe I was on the same ship. We shook hands, had a chat and a laugh, and I told him my cabin number. He said he'd be around that night for the Craig. Then I doubled back to find the lads in my cabin. I told them my D just had a massive barney with some wooden tops guardsmen, and that they had said they'd be around later to kick my English head in, along with those of any other raw wankers who wanted to know. I was slagged off all day for being such a daft bastard and letting them know our cabin number. The tension was pretty high as we sat there waiting for it all to kick off that evening. Looking around the room, the other boys looked like they were expecting a rematch of the Battle of Bannockburn about 8 o'clock. Wilbur knocked on our cabin door. Taff says, "Who the fuck's that?" In his hardest voice, I told him to go and answer it, but he decided he'd rather not and invited me to go and answer it myself. "You pillock." I jumped off my bunk and opened the door to find a smiling Wilbur standing there. I slammed the door in his face and shouted, "It's the Jock Guards. Come on, give us a hand." Then I opened it again and dragged and now bemused Wilbur in. They all looked like scolded cats, expecting Major Mayhem, and I couldn't help cracking up. They nearly killed me. I introduced everyone to Wilbur, and we got pissed and smoked crushed up aspirin. Why we smoked crushed up aspirin, I have absolutely no idea. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but it does absolutely nothing for you. It doesn't even cure headaches. We spent a few hours reminiscing, me talking a bit about what T-Battery had got up to, how a rapier works, that sort of thing. And then we listened to Wilbur's war stories. He told us about the Battle of Tumbledown, a savage hand-to-hand firefight that had played a major part in finally breaking the Argentinian resistance. He'd seen one of their officers, Lieutenant Robert Lawrence, shot in the head by an enemy sniper. This man lost 40% of his brain matter in the shooting, but recovered well later, and the episode was to be the basis for the BBC film Tumbledown. That kind of put our experiences into perspective. We had a fair few evenings like that, chewing the fat, talking bollocks to each other, and were getting on famously with the jocks by the end. Too famously in one case. A Lance bombardier was found in bed with one of the Scots lads. His excuse was that he had somehow got into the wrong bunk and hadn't noticed the 6'3" guardsman in there. Well, it was obviously a mistake anyone could make. Things quietened down a bit after one of our lads, Jim from 31 Delta, got in a fight over an illegal weapon, and a lad called Farzi stabbed him in the stomach with a bayonet, only just enough to break the skin. Luckily, this prompted the senior ranks to call a parade, during which, ironically, a big scuffle broke out, and warned us that on arrival in the UK, each man would be thoroughly searched and their equipment put through a metal detector. Anyone found with illegal firearms would receive a 7-year jail sentence and a dishonorable discharge. That night, I went up on deck and threw my prized Colt .45 pistol into the sea. It was a wrench. I'd found it lying in the mud around Stanley, where its RG officer owner had dropped it, and I really didn't want to let it go, but there didn't seem to be much choice, and I'm sure there were other lads doing the same. The ironic thing was, we weren't searched at customs after all. You could have driven a tank through if you wanted, and the strong rumor doing the rounds at the time was that the officers had kept all their stash hidden behind the panels of the rapiers. If you're enjoying this, please like, subscribe, and share. You can read A.A. McNally's book Still Watching Men Burn, Fighting the PTSD War at Amazon.